The month of March is upon us, which means they like to say, this is March. That's Caitlin Ford, that's Colby Crawford, I'm Carter Hill. So thrilled you can join us on this edition of the 3304 Tip-Off Show. And guys, let's get right into this thing. March Madness is back in Blacksburg. What a feeling.
Oh, I'm so excited. I mean, it's always a good time when the Hokies come to Castle. I mean, I think we're going to have a great matchup against Marshall, who has been rolling the last couple games of the season, you know, coming off a win of the Sun Belt Championship. But I think it's going to be a great one. I'm really excited.
Yeah, I mean, it's been amazing. When you see all the branded NCAA merch and just apparel and all their logos start popping up around town, and everyone's like, oh, that's going on this weekend. It's just an incredible vibe when the show is coming here. So we're looking forward to it.
As you know, Colby, it means no water bottles are allowed courtside at Castle Coliseum now. You got to get those Powerade cups. So time to get those Powerade cups ready to go. But unfortunately for Virginia Tech, and we'll start with you, Colby, the storyline of this NCAA tournament is Liz Kitley. She's not going to be available to her ACL, according to head coach Kenny Brooks.
Yeah, you and me were sitting in the press conference yesterday, and the writing was on the wall, missing, obviously, the ACC tournament, going out in the regular season finale against UVA. The writing was on the wall with her. It wasn't really looking like she was going to play, but there was still hope there. But, I mean, it's just such an unfortunate situation. Like you mentioned, the greatest player in program history. Maybe there really hasn't been a better ambassador for the Virginia Tech brand, maybe over the last 4 to 5 years than Liz Kitley. So it's just a stinger. We were sitting in there. The room got sucked out of the building. It's just a terrible situation. But I don't think that should undermine the great career she's had here and all the accomplishments she's had. So I think she'll still be there for her team, and it shouldn't put a dampening on this weekend. And the accomplishment is to host the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, my heart goes out to her family, Coach Brooks, her teammates. I mean, certainly this wasn't how she wanted to end her career at Virginia Tech. But, I mean, I honestly think it gives the Hokies something even more to play for, to bring that championship for Liz. But, I mean, she has been so fun to watch all season long. I mean, it's going to take a toll, but I still have hope for the Hokies to pull through.
It really is just such a tragic ending for her career at Virginia Tech. As you mentioned, Colby, she is the best player to ever suit up at Virginia Tech in women's basketball history. I mean, that's set in stone. With that being said, though, Kenny Brooks has had 2 weeks to kind of reconfigure the way the way these guys want to play, and maybe that can have an effect this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. They've had a lot of time. Now, you mentioned before the ACC tournament, Kenny Brooks has been pretty consistent in saying they had one practice essentially without Liz before they had to go down and play Miami and get to Greensboro. I mean, when you lose an All-American type player, a cornerstone of your team, it's hard to adjust. But they've had some time. Obviously, you have veterans in Kayla King who had big performances last year in the tournament, obviously scoring 14 against Ohio State, 12 against LSU in the Final Four. So she can step up. She's averaging a tick below where she's been at 7 points. Matilda Eck, the transfer, she's really got to step up. She's been 0 for March. So got to look to her. And then the center, Clara Strack, I think everyone's super high on Clara Strack. 6'5", maybe coined as the next Liz Kitley. What can she do with that preparation against a tough Marshall team, as you mentioned, Caitlin?
Yeah, for sure.
And Caitlin, to build off of that, I do want to pose this question to you. It feels like, and Colby just kind of mentioned this, for Virginia Tech to have success in the NCAA tournament, it's got to be based on everybody essentially not named Georgia Amoore.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Clara Strack, we saw a good performance against Miami in the ACC tournament. I mean, I think she has what it takes. She is almost as tall as Liz Kitley. I mean, they call her the mini Liz Kitley, but I think between her, Kayla King, like you were mentioning, just stepping up, like getting a little tick above last season. I mean, she has what it takes. We've seen it for sure. But, I mean, I definitely think a lot of it is going to be Georgia Amoore. I mean, she has what it takes, but, you know, I think it's going to be tough, but I think they got it.
Well, there's so much more to discuss when it comes to Virginia Tech women's basketball. And for that, Nels Williams stands on the other side. Nels, what do you got?
Doom and gloom would best describe the current vibes surrounding Virginia Tech women's basketball right now. Georgia Amoore has not confirmed whether or not she'll return next season. Liz Kitley suffered a torn ACL right there against Virginia and won't play in the NCAA tournament. And head coach Kenny Brooks, he's reportedly interviewed with the University of Kentucky for their head coaching job and has not confirmed nor denied he spoke with the Wildcats when asked about it this weekend. The vibes, not great right now. But some good news, Tech has had almost 2 weeks to prepare for the NCAA tournament, where they're a 4 seed and hosting the first 2 rounds in Blacksburg this weekend. That's plenty of time for Brooks and company to catch freshman center Clara Strack, who's touted as the next Liz Kitley and has gotten progressively better as the season has gone on, up to speed and retooled this Hokies offense to be as efficient as possible without Kitley, as it struggled mightily against Miami and Notre Dame in the ACC tournament without her in the lineup. On tap for Tech is Marshall this Friday at 3:30, and although it's technically considered a neutral site game, it'll be a home game for the Hokies. Maroon and Orange will dominate Castle Coliseum, and while who knows what the result of this year's March Madness run will be for Virginia Tech, I suggest this to those worried about the team and what will happen to this squad in the offseason. Just enjoy the ride. Don't worry about whether or not Amor will come back or if Brooks leaves for the SEC. Enjoy the fact that you got to witness some of the greatest women's basketball, not just played at Virginia Tech all the time, but in the ACC in the country. These last few years will be looked back upon fondly. And in the grand scheme of things, Amor, Kitley, and Brooks will go down as some of the greatest athletes in Hokies history. So, amidst this period of uncertainty and negativity, savor the journey and try to celebrate the legacy these remarkable individuals have carved in Virginia Tech women's basketball history. Guys.
Great stuff, Nels. Appreciate you as always. Guys, how about that? What a wrinkle to this thing. We talked about Liz Kitley, but Kenny Brooks maybe going to Kentucky? How about that, Caitlin?
Yeah, I mean, definitely not what we want to hear as a Hokies fan. I mean, both Liz Kitley and the Kenny Brooks news in one day was certainly not what we wanted to hear. I mean, he's had so much chemistry with the players. I mean, like players like Clara Strack, he's already started to improve, like see her improve, help her improve, where it's like we want to see him be there all 4 years and like help these players improve. So certainly not what we want to see. So hopefully those rumors aren't true.
I mean, circling back to that, Carter, we were sitting in the press conference and it was already a weird vibe because everyone sort of knew the writing was on the wall with that situation as well. And we didn't know if it was going to get addressed. And then Mark Berman of the Roanoke Times, he posed a question, and it wasn't exactly the most assuring answer.
No.
If you're a Virginia Tech fan, it wasn't exactly a denial. And I think it definitely raised questions. Now, you understand from the standpoint of being Kentucky. I mean, Lexington is basketball.
Yeah.
Memorial Coliseum, they have their own arena. Bunch of funding, the SEC and the Power 2 now. You understand, but Kenny Brooks means so much to this community. I was watching an interview with Evan Hughes earlier in the week, and he made such an emphasis on, I would do anything for that man. I mean, I think his character precedes basketball, and whatever the decision will be, I don't think he'll leave on a bad note. I think his legacy is cemented here, and the man that he is to the community, not only as a coach to these players, but just the legacy he's left and his impact will shine through, whatever his decision is.
Well, let me ask you this way, Colby. Kenny Brooks grew up in Waynesboro. He played at James Madison. He coached at JMU, and now he's coached at Virginia Tech. Could you really see him leaving for Kentucky?
I mean, I think you mentioned it right there. He was willing to leave his alma mater. Granted,
Yeah.
he went to an ACC school, but now, with conference realignment and revenue sports really shaking up college sports, no offense to the Atlantic Coast Conference, it's not exactly as admirable of a destination as it once was. Now, if Kentucky throws cash at him, I mean, you can't blame the guy, but it's a tough situation, and there's really no right answer. It's a bummer because this community loves him, and they'd wrap their arms around him as they have, but you understand it's a business, and he's got to make the best decision for him and his family.
Definitely interesting timing for sure. Definitely interesting timing. And because of that, I mean, the Hokies have a basketball game today. They're playing Marshall, the 13 seed. Caitlin, kind of what are your first thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to be an interesting matchup. I mean, Marshall plays a really quick pace game. I mean, constantly rotating out players, and they are a short squad. I mean, most of their players are under 6 feet, and Abby Beeman, their star player, is 5'4". I mean, most of Tech, I mean, even barring Elizabeth Kitley not playing, are over 6 feet. So it'll be an interesting matchup to see how fast-paced they are. But I think even though they have been rolling lately, I think Virginia Tech has it in the bag. But
and Colby, the atmosphere absolutely should favor the Hokies as well.
Yeah, I mean, Castle Coliseum, granted, with all that news, Brooks circulating, and obviously Kitley, it doesn't matter. These Hokie fans will still show out in droves and cheer for the team in maroon and orange, whoever it is. So it's going to be exciting, and it's definitely going to be a boost. But Marshall, it's a tough matchup for sure.
Yeah.
The winner gets Baylor and Vanderbilt in the second round. That is on Sunday. Did you guys see the box score of that Marshall JMU Sunbelt game, by the way, too?
Unreal.
Listen to this. So Marshall, they won this game in overtime, by the way. They went 30 of 99 from the field. They took 99 shots. but they made 30 of them. It's like the Moneyball phrase. He gets on base. Made 30 shots. They forced 39 turnovers. JMU still took them to overtime, and they only shot 17% from three, but they took 45 of them. That is like, honestly, probably the craziest box score I've ever seen.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, even it being an overtime win as well, like just a crazy matchup there. But
By far the craziest. You take a deeper peek down that box score, the offensive rebounds, turnovers. I mean, it's just, even Coach Brooks mentioned it yesterday. He was like, I'm not good at calculus, as he said, but I mean, it'll put your brain just in a work trying to understand how that game ended the way it did. I was watching, and it was like they entered a vortex. It just didn't make sense. So, I mean, we'll see, but that was a great game, and hopefully a similar result on Friday for the team there.
Well, Marshall definitely plays a different brand of basketball, but we also can't forget about Mike Young's Hokies. The men's side of things are participating in the NIT, and to catch up on Virginia Tech's 74-58 win over Richmond, let's get to Raza Umarani.
Look, I get it. Not making the NCAA tournament feels like an unsuccessful season. Everybody wants the potentially once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that is playing in March Madness. And to some, there's no point in playing any basketball if you don't make the field of 68. That's a sentiment that's certainly been echoed by a plethora of other teams that fell just short of the big dance, including Rick Pitino's St. John's squad and the ACC's own Pitt Panthers. But Mike Young's Virginia Tech team has made one thing certain. They want to keep playing basketball no matter what tournament it's in. So when the NIT came calling, Young and the Hokies were all in. Tabbed as a 3 seed thanks to a wave of opt-outs from fellow bubble teams, Tech hosted Richmond on Tuesday night inside Castle Coliseum. The Spiders, who won the Atlantic 10 regular season title before being upset in their first game of the conference tournament by St. Joe's, certainly wouldn't be a pushover. They won 15 games in conference after all. Such was the case for the beginning of the game. It was full steam ahead on the struggle bus for the Hokies offense as they started just 1 for 16 from the floor and didn't reach double digits until 12 minutes had elapsed. But while that side of the floor was what Outcasts would describe as cooler than being cool, Tech's defense held things down for long enough for the scoring to slowly but surely progress to the mean. After the ice-cold start, Tech made 25 of its next 38 shots, building a first-half lead and pulling away from the Spiders to the tune of a dominant 74-58 win. 4 Hokies finished the game in double figures. Lynn Kidd led the way with 20 points and 8 boards on 9 of 10 shooting, while Sean Padula shot a perfect 4 for 4 in the second half to build a 17-point game of his own. Perhaps the most positive development was MJ Collins' 15 points with a career-high 4 threes, further displaying his increased confidence as this season has winded down. In his last 5 games, the sophomore guard is averaging 14 points, 4 rebounds, and 4 assists while shooting 50% from the field and a pretty 48% from distance. That's a good solid turnaround from being 0 for November, as Coach Young dubbed him earlier. Last but certainly not least was Hunter Couture, who chimed in with 10 points in his final home game. With the game in hand with about 90 seconds remaining, Couture was subbed out, and his head coach urged the crowd to rise to its feet and give his first ever recruit to Virginia Tech the love and ovation he deserved. Hokie Nation, of course, obliged. So, as March rolls on, Tech is still playing basketball. Maybe it's not what we expected, but there's at least 40 minutes left in this Hokie season. On tap in round 2 of the NIT is a matchup with Ohio State, the 2 seed in the region. The Hokies and Buckeyes will do battle on Saturday at 7 p.m. in Columbus. And regardless of whether or not Tech advances, one fact remains. This team is simply happy to still be out there hooping. Guys?
Well, as Raza just mentioned, it's going to be the Hokies and the Ohio State Buckeyes in the second round of the NIT on Saturday in Columbus. Colby Crawford, your first thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I mean, Ohio State's got a great team. Number 2 seed in the NIT maybe gets overlooked because obviously it's a national invitational tournament, and some people might look down upon that. But this is a team that realistically could have made a run through the Big Ten tournament. Maybe had a little situation like NC State, ended up in the Big Dance. However, they've got great dynamic guard play behind guys like Bruce Thornton, Roddy Gale Jr. I mean, they really lace it from a high clip from the outside. So you're going to have to see great defensive performances from perimeter defenders, MJ Collins and Hunter Couture. So it'll be a fun matchup, and the Ohio State fans will surely show out.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it'll be an interesting matchup. I mean, in the Hokies' first game in the tournament, they only scored 2 points in the first 10 minutes.
Yeah.
It was
wild.
It was a wild watch,
Crazy.
and then they ended up scoring over 70. So they ended up unleashing, but it'll be an interesting matchup to see for sure.
Started 1 of 16 from the field. Also, Colby, Virginia Tech, interesting wrinkle. 2-9 on the road this season. So that will be a challenge for the Hokies in Columbus for sure.
Playing outside of Castle hasn't really boded well for this team this year, but they've gotten better down the stretch. I think they've really come together. It's like obviously the first day loss, well, I guess technically second round loss up in D.C. was a bummer to FSU, but coming down the stretch there, really played well at home, great on the road, other than that one drop game at Notre Dame. But it'll be interesting to see with this team going on the road.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Virginia Tech, Ohio State, the winner gets in the quarterfinals, either Wake Forest or Georgia, next Tuesday night on the road. Speaking of the NIT, this has been the topic of conversation throughout the week. We've seen multiple major programs opt not to play. Pitt, St. John's, Syracuse, among many others. Kaylin, what are your thoughts on that, choosing not to play postseason basketball?
I think it's interesting because I kind of like the tournament just to see how things would go if you were in the NCAA tournament. It's always great to play more basketball, but I don't know. I think it's interesting, but I'm glad the Hokies opted to play.
Casey, what are your thoughts?
You've seen a great uproar from a litany of people who've forgotten more basketball than I'll ever know. So former coaches coming out saying very passionately.
Tom Crean?
Yeah, exactly. Very passionately saying, you play the games. I mean, for example, Hunter Couture, his last game could have been that Notre Dame game or the FSU game and just walked away. If Coach Young thought, well, transfer portal season, we got to go rebuild our roster for next year. Sorry, Hunt. I mean, I just don't think that's the way it was meant to be. And I like all these coaches that show this is still important. We're going to accept our invite. We're going to play. Hopefully this will show the larger governing bodies. Let's push back this transfer portal window. I mean, the first day of the NCAA tournament was yesterday, and it's getting overshadowed by over 300, 400 players entering the transfer portal. It's taken away from the magic of March, and it's really just upsetting to see that. All these teams have become such a business. You kind of lose the thrill that these are 18 to 22-year-olds trying to play basketball, a kid's game at the end of the day. So those are my thoughts on it.
It's crazy to me because personally, for me, I would say let's play. Now, that comes from a Virginia Tech background. I get it. A school like North Carolina, they opted out of the NIT last year. Well, they were the first ever preseason #1 team to miss the NCAA tournament. That was a massive disappointment for the Tar Heels. But a school like Syracuse, not to call anybody out here, but a school like Syracuse, they weren't maybe supposed to make the NCAA tournament coming into the year. They had a great year under Red Autry. Maybe you want to build some momentum. They have some younger guys on the roster. I just don't necessarily see the downside to playing basketball because, as Tom Crean said, how much time can the portal really take up, do you think?
I agree with you with that sentiment. A lot of these younger guys, especially in the Hokie situation, Jaden Young, Brandon Recksteiner, a lot of these guys who just through ACC play didn't get those minutes, just rotationally wise, still trying to be in the mix. This is a great opportunity to show against still very quality teams. You mentioned Syracuse, a Pittsburgh that denied, they didn't accept their invite, a Pittsburgh team that really had no expectations.
And started 3 freshmen.
Exactly. Freshmen who were on the all-freshman team still building. They're building a program there under Jeff Capel. And it's confusing, but I understand it that the NCAA and their timeline has kind of tied these coaches' hands, and you can't knock them. Rick Pitino's going to go out and find himself a 5-star in the portal.
Yeah.
Now, what do you have if they were played in the NIT and hung an NIT banner up in Madison Square Garden? Maybe it's not the same level. Maybe it varies program to program. I'm with you. Play the games.
Well, it won't be a huge upset if the Hokies take down Ohio State, but there have already been plenty of upsets in the NCAA tournament so far this year. So for more on that, let's go to Riley Klaus.
Sometimes life throws you something unexpected. A pesky nail pops a tire on your morning commute, or you pull up to the McDonald's drive-thru to order a Shamrock Shake and, of course, the ice cream machine is broken. Well, you've probably heard that one before, but when the month of March rolls around, the attention turns to a bracket with 135 lines. Every year, the same headlines roll in declaring the odds of a perfect bracket are just about the same as cotton candy falling from the sky, but every year the masses take another swing at doing the impossible. In the end, it is not the stats, but the stories which prevail in making memories. It's not a matter of if, but when a bracket buster will make a Cinderella run. Who can forget Sister Jean and Loyola Chicago's miracle Final Four appearance, or St. Peter's improbable flight to the Elite Eight? How about when a 16 seed defeated a 1 seed for the first time ever in 2018 as the UMBC Retrievers had a golden showing against Virginia just for Fairleigh Dickinson to strike down the top seed Purdue in 2023? Even before the big dance began, chaos already ensued in conference tournaments this season. In the ACC, the 10-seed NC State won 5 games in a row as a pair of DJs helped the Wolfpack punch a ticket to the dance floor. Yale barely beat the buzzer for the Ivy League championship. Meanwhile, confetti fell on the court in the middle of a game between Duquesne and VCU in the Atlantic 10 championship. Amid all this ruckus, the women's game has been just as full with sparkling stories as the sport fields the most star power we have ever seen. Whether it was Caitlin Clark's record-breaking season, South Carolina's nail-biting victory over Tennessee, or the first tournament burst for 4 schools, this season is shaping up to be one for the ages. The clock is ticking until a so-called David beats a Goliath. So, if your bracket was busted following the first game of the tournament, after you told your friends this is the year, or you picked the wrong 5 versus 12 upset, it's all right. Just sit back, relax, and watch history unfold before your eyes. You are truly witnessing the magic of madness. Guys?
Well, thanks, Mr. Klaus. Great stuff, as always. All right, guys, got to get your final thoughts on the weekend. We'll start in Blacksburg, and we'll start with you, Caitlin. Who's making it out of the Blacksburg Regional and advancing to Portland?
All right, well, today I have to take the Hokies against Marshall, and then I'm going to take Baylor over Vanderbilt, and then I'm going to take the Hokies over Baylor. I definitely think it's going to be a tough matchup, but I see Virginia Tech coming out. I mean, especially being in Castle, the energy is just going to carry them through. So I see Virginia Tech coming out on top.
KC.
I've sort of garnered the knack of being the campy optimist here for Virginia Tech sports, but I do think they advanced today against a tough Marshall team. I think it's going to be very close, but I think you mentioned the home crowd lifts the squad. I think Baylor clears through Vanderbilt. And now Baylor is not exactly the same team as they were under the legacy of Kim Mulkey when she was there. So it's not exactly the same program. Still a very good team this year. Baylor Bears are going to come and bring it Sunday. I think Virginia Tech advances to Sweet 16. Past that, I'm not sure, but I think the Hokies advance out of the regional, being lifted by the Hokie faithful in Castle.
All right, here's who I got. Can we get camera 3 on me real fast? I'm going to look straight into the camera. All right, today, Virginia Tech and Marshall. The Hokies are moving on, and then in Vanderbilt and Baylor, anchor down, go Doors, Jake Lyman to the second round. We're going to get an Evan Hughes, Jake Lyman second-round matchup on Sunday, and the Commodores are going to end Virginia Tech's season, and Jake Lyman is going to Portland. That would be an upset, right?
That's a hot take right there.
That's a hot take. But anchor down, go Doors. I think Vanderbilt is going to get the job done. Speaking of the women's tournament, let's go bracket to bracket here. I'm curious, Colby, who do you got winning it all, actually?
In the women's tournament?
Women's side of things. We'll start there.
Tournament, I think it's really hard to bet against the South Carolina Gamecocks there. But, I mean, Caitlin Clark, it almost seems like it's building up for that dynastic run. I don't think I can bet against the Hawkeyes. We saw them earlier in the year in Charlotte, and she gets a very friendly whistle. As she can score at such a high clip, I think it's written for the Iowa Hawkeyes to come home with it this year.
I mean, I also have Iowa. I mean, how can you not? I mean, I have them taking down the Gamecocks in the championship. I mean, Caitlin Clark has just been such a player for this team, and I mean, she's done so much for the sport of women's basketball that I would be really excited to see her take her team to the championship before she goes on her run in the WNBA. I mean, I would love to see Iowa win, and I think they have what it takes. I mean, Caitlin scoring over 30 points per game. I mean, what more can you ask for?
Well, I would not like to see Iowa win. Spurs up South Carolina. The Gamecocks are going undefeated, and South Carolina is going to win the national title. On the men's side of things, who do we got? We'll start with you, Caitlin, then go to Colby.
For the men's, I have UConn. I mean, I think they have what it takes. I've liked what I've seen all season, and I think they're going to win.
Well, I just want to preface this with I'm a big printed out, write it out bracket guy. So we can have a physical copy. There's no excuses, 25 brackets, none of this nonsense. I'm going to go with a team that I think is really hot and is going to beat UConn in their regional. I'm going with the Auburn Tigers.
Really? Okay.
Led by Bruce Pearl. They're going to get it done this time. Great team. Do all the little things. They can score with the best of them, play great defense, and I mean, I think they're going to face some tough teams. I think Houston might advance through one of those regionals. Great defensive squad. But I'm going to go with the Auburn Tigers. I think they've got it all, and they piece it together this year.
That is a great regional. Like, I could easily see Auburn going on that run.
Yeah,
Iowa
sure.
State's also in that regional. Iowa State just thumped Houston in the Big 12 title game. Auburn is ultra athletic, but then you got the UConn Huskies. And the UConn Huskies are going back-to-back and going to win the national title. So I got to agree with you.
Yeah.
I got to agree with you. But I agree with you too, Colby. You got to go written. I was telling these guys yesterday, at my house, we got written brackets we do. And Michigan State and Mississippi State played yesterday. And so I had MSU advancing. I actually had Mississippi State advancing. My mom will never know. She's just going to chart it as MSU. That's a dub for Carter Hill. And I'll take the 2 points. So I'm very, very excited. I'm very, very excited. Guys, this has been a throw as always. Your final thoughts heading into the weekend.
Yeah, I'm so excited to see what the Hokies do in Castle Coliseum. I mean, they're going to have a tough region to get through, but, you know, I see them advancing. I see there being a chance they advance to Final Four, even without Liz Kitley.
Okay.
I mean, they have Georgia Amor,
They do.
who's shown us all season what she has, but I think it's going to be really exciting. I'm so happy it's March. And, yeah.
I mean, it's going to be a busy weekend. You know, I was like, oh, how am I going to plan out my sleep schedule with all this going on? To quote John Rossini, as you said, we sleep in May.
We sleep in May. Can we say it in unison?
We sleep in May.
That's exactly right. Well, the Hokies and the Thundering Herd take place later this afternoon. Virginia Tech and Ohio State in the NIT tomorrow. For Caitlin Ford, Colby Crawford, I'm Carter Hill signing off from the Moss Art Center, and we'll talk to you next week.